Yesterday at UFC 313, Justin Gaethje threw one of the most subtle jabs at the UFC that I've ever seen, and if you weren't paying close attention, you might have missed it. If you take a look at some of the screenshots surrounding me from the co-main event yesterday, you'll notice that Justin Gaethje's gloves are a little bit different. They have no UFC logo on the dorsal side. And as an avid glove collector and UFC historian, I immediately knew that there was a little bit of a story behind those Justin Gaethje gloves. So first, let's listen to the broadcast explanation as to why his gloves had no logo on them.
Now my broadcast partners were wondering why that UFC logo was on the gloves of Justin Gaethje. They rubbed out during warm-ups. Dr. Campbell came over and told me he chose to keep these gloves on. I guess they felt good. So those are the exact gloves that Rafael is wearing, but the UFC logo is on them.
Justin was also asked about this in the post-fight press conference, and here's what he had to say.
Gloves, no logo on the gloves. What was?
Yeah, they started coming off in the back, so they wanted to make sure that some of the flakes weren't going in my eyes or his eyes, so they took them off the tape. They wanted me to change them. I was like, hell no. I got them on, I already broke them in. There's no way I'm switching to fresh gloves.
Now, the only problem with that story is these gloves made by Century that Justin was wearing yesterday have the logo printed in a way that doesn't rub off. And in more than 7,000 professional fights fought with this model glove, we have never once seen a fighter have the entire logo ripped off of both hands even after their fight ended, let alone before getting into the octagon. Now, these are not to be confused with this Vices pair that had a brief stint in the UFC and were known to have the logo peeled, as seen here at UFC 302 when Islam Makhachev defeated Dustin Poirier. This peeling is just not something that happens with these Century gloves. It never has, and it probably never will again. So how do we explain Justin's situation here?
We were 1 week away from the fight, and we were training for Hooker, and Hooker ended up breaking his hand, so with the opponent change with physique.
So in that brief snippet I pulled from the UFC Embedded, posted in the lead up to UFC 313, you'll notice a lot of blurring around the gym of Justin Gaethje. That blurring is the Onyx logo. Onyx is the brand owned by Trevor Wittman, longtime friend and head trainer of Justin Gaethje. Onyx is a brand that's widely considered to have solved the issue of eye pokes plaguing MMA today. More importantly, it's the only brand that Justin Gaethje will train in. Their grappling glove, which you can see in the center of the screen here, is built in a way that forms a 90-degree angle around the knuckles, preventing eye pokes altogether. And Justin Gaethje has been extremely vocal about this over the years.
I have maintained, that I still do, that Trevor Wittman makes the fucking best MMA gloves that have ever existed. And I think that everybody should use those gloves. I put those Onyx gloves on before. They make your hand completely curved. They still allow grappling, but it keeps your hand like this, where you don't have as many eye pokes. The old UFC gloves, they encourage your hands to be in an open position. And when guys are fighting like this, like eye pokes are one of the worst fucking things about the sport.
So if Trevor Wittman's design is universally agreed to be the closest thing we have to an eye poke solution, why doesn't the UFC use them? To figure that out, we have to look at one last piece of context.
I know it was related to the fact that it became an open market because I failed to patent that design, which I would have done.
Right.
And so I figured how many people are going to fight on that, and
Right.
though I didn't have the vision to patent it, so it became open season.
Okay, so Adriano comes along,
And
he makes the same glove, different logo, goes to UFC.
Yeah.
Now he has a contract with them, and you didn't know him or anything about him.
No.
Now that was Dr. Stewanik, a ringside physician who saved the UFC from becoming outlawed by creating the Boxergenics brand. What he's explaining in that clip is why the UFC switched from Boxergenics to Iwano-branded gloves in 1996. Now see, the UFC wanted sole rights to that glove model, but Dr. Stewanik wanted other promotions to be able to use them to protect themselves from legal action. So because Dr. Stewanik had never patented the glove, the UFC teamed up with John Iwano, took the design, created the Iwano glove, and ran with it. And of course, they made sure the Iwano glove couldn't be used by any other promotion. Now, it's widely considered that something very similar happened when Trevor Wittman brought his glove to the UFC. The UFC was probably on board, so long as they get sole rights to the glove, which Trevor Wittman probably didn't want to do. So all this brings us back to UFC 313. With the culmination of the UFC switching back to one of the most eye-poke-prone gloves in MMA history, and the blurring of the Onyx brand from the embedded videos, it's likely that Justin Gaethje and his team made sure that he was not going out with the UFC logo on his glove, essentially giving the UFC a little bit of a taste of their own medicine. Now I'll leave you with the final nail in the coffin, Justin Gaethje's tweet that is resurfacing from March 30th, 2024, following Chris Weidman winning essentially by eye poke, where he said, "Too bad the UFC doesn't want to change those shit gloves."